High fly ball into right field. She is gone. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. This one by Mattingly. Oh, hang on to the roof. Goodbye, home. Don Mattingly. Tuck waits one. Deep left field. Down the line. That ball is out of here. Out of here. He's at the wall. And the legend.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Table Setters covering all things Major League Baseball. As always, I'm Steve, joined with my tag team partner, Devin. What's going on, man?
What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 104. We're here to talk all things baseball for you guys. So sit tight, enjoy yourselves, and we're here. We're the last couple weeks here. So officially, I feel like I've been saying this for a while. We still have lots of things to talk about, lots of things that are yet to be sewn up. So it's going to be a race to the finish here. How are you feeling about your squad over there?
Feeling good. I mean, obviously losing 7-0 last night does not feel good. It was the first time the Yanks have been shut out by the Twins in quite some time. But taking 2 or 3 from Boston in Boston, you have to be happy about that. The Yankees taking care of business and doing what they need to do to get into October. But as far as what they are going to do, it's a crapshoot. You laid out the cards on the table. I think the Yankees have shown us all this year that whatever team shows up during that day is just that, the team that showed up during that day. There's really a lack of consistency over some stretches. So we're either going to get the really hot Yankee team over a stretch through October, or they're going to fizzle out, and we're all going to be here to cover it in full.
Let me ask you this. We started off the show last week with about a 5-minute conversation about gout. So I'm going to go on a little lighter note now. So football season now in full gear, 2 weeks in. Baseball season, 2 weeks left until the playoffs. You're a Yankee fan and a Packers fan on the football side. If I put a gun to your head, who has the better shot at winning it all this year as we sit here on September 16th?
I mean, not even a question. It's the Green Bay Packers. I think the Packers offense and their defense have the opportunity to do something special where it's not going to take luck and things to bounce right. I think the Packers going away are going to have double-digit wins. What we saw from Detroit and what we saw against the Commanders, those were the real deal. And especially it's aged better after this week, watching Detroit beat up on Chicago. The
True.
Commanders, we know, are a good team. But like I said before, the Yankees are a crapshoot. Would it shock me to see them get to the World Series? I guess there is a little bit of shock that would be there because of how inconsistent they've played, but they have been wildly underwhelming for large parts of this season. And I would never put my money on them getting back to being one of the final 2 teams.
What about Jazz? I want to know, as a Yankee fan, what do you feel like when he says we're the best team in the league? He says it over and over. Are you cool with that? I know one of the thoughts is what else is he going to say? He's supposed to say that, but do you like it? Do you like the cockiness, or do you kind of wish he would just kind of keep it closed and let his play do the talking?
That's what Jazz has always done. I don't dislike it at all. And I think it's kind of funny when you go out and say it, especially when he did say it. The Yankees were immersed in what was a really bad stretch at that time. It's kind of like the old verbiage, fake it till you make it, and whatever you say will be type of affirmation. So maybe he's out there doing, and he knows something we don't know. I mean, he's in that clubhouse. He knows the bond that team has developed over the adversity they faced throughout the season. But I have no issue with it. But do I think it's based in reality? I don't think they're the best team in baseball. I think the best team in baseball resides in the National League. And we will talk about those teams during this episode.
No doubt. Lots and lots to talk about. It's clenching season, that's for sure. And just before we get into it, because I know we're going to open the show for real in a minute, before we forget, let's give a shout out to our friend Mike B here for winning our Fantasy Baseball League officially. I know some people are probably going into their final week this week. We ended ours in the For the Fame Baseball League that we mentioned on here quite a lot. He broke my streak of 3 straight championships. I mean, I didn't even make the playoffs, so I've been out for a little while. But props to him. Powerhouse of a team. Pitching staff was incredible, and he just got off to a start. I mean, I'm sure there's some champions listening right now where a big part of winning that championship week, especially head-to-head points, is getting off to a good start, and that he did.
Yeah, for sure. And Garrett Crochet definitely was carrying his rotation all year, and never more so than the championship week. He got off to a large lead in the beginning and never relinquished. He even withstood a Kevin Gausman complete game shutout, which they even put a dent in his lead. Great season for Mike. Feels weird to call him Mike, but for B, it's one of those things where you watch from end to end. It will take some luck, but the constructed of the team. I mean, you said it in our preseason episode about after the draft, you had said you identified his team as being the best and most well-rounded. And
True.
I think really the X factor of the team, obviously you can go to Yamamoto, you have Skeens and Crochet now that you guys have the rosters in front of you, but the biggest X factor was James Wood taking the next step, and he did for him. So he has his team built out for the next couple of years. His second title in our illustrious league, first since 2016, and well-deserved championship. I understand that he beat Perrier and kind of a blowout, but Perrier's season was just as impressive. He did a really good job of constructing his team as well. And it's so goddamn hard to pass that finish line. I know you won 3 straight, but it feels like to get that first. I mean, you feel it as the commissioner in our football league. You just can't get over the hump. And it's for whatever reason, it's this thing where it's a bugaboo. But once you break that seal a little bit, you finally get a couple in the Rolodex of championships. But shout out to Bizzata, great championship run, and we'll see him defend the title here.
Yeah, and just in case you're wondering what Steve is alluding to, my fantasy football league that I've run since probably I was a teenager. It's about 20 years old or so now. There was maybe 1 or 2 years we missed there. I've run it for that long, very passionate about it. Pretty much the same members throughout, a couple changes here and there. I have never won that league in almost 20 years. I'm in the playoffs more than I'm not. I've been to several finals, semifinals, just can't do it. I don't know if anyone else thinks this that's listening, but sometimes I do feel like there is some type of commissioner's curse. But I got to ask you, so that belt behind me that I've talked about plenty of times on this show, that is a centerpiece of my background. One of the things you can see more than anything else. What's your suggestion for how do I replace that? What should I put there?
It's a tough thing. I mean, you got the trophy, you got the belt. I think you have both titles back there.
Oh,
right?
yeah, I have 2 trophies too. I didn't even think about that. They're kind of behind my head, so they're not seen as well in most episodes. So it's not like I can just move those over because those are leaving me as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you have to put some memorabilia out there. If you have any prized possessions on the other side of the camera, pop them in there as well. Maybe pop some wrestling figures in there if you got any in the package wrestling figures you want to display. But I mean, those titles going away. I mean, I'm sure they were collecting dust being there for over 3 years sitting on that shelf. I know you probably, take it out and take a look at it, but
every once in a
they
while,
become a centerpiece down there. You have never podcasted without them in the background.
Yeah, I'm going to have to start searching for something. As far as wrestling figures, those are all out of the box. My 2-year-old and 5-year-old just kick the living shit out of them all day. So that's not an option either. I mean, I guess I could take some used ones.
That's what they're meant to do. I mean,
True.
I got my collection of Hasbro's behind me and they are in good condition, but wrestling figures, I got my old beat up ones that when my nieces and nephews come over and they want to play with them, it's fair game. Wrestling figures are meant to be played with for sure. But if you guys want to support our show and follow us on everything we're doing on social media, you can follow us at Table Setters Pod on IG and also the X Machine. Devin's running the X Machine over there, posting up polls and conversations, interacting, and that's how we find some of our guests and dig into the archive of the baseball fandom out there. And despite football being underway, we're walking into week 3 as we say goodbye to week 2. Baseball is on the final stretch here, as Devin mentioned. 14 days from now, we will have the wild card game to preview the first one there, and the series will start. And the fact that we have the playoffs starting, like I said, in 14 days. We're recording on September 16th, 2025 at 2:22 p.m. Eastern. It's wild to think. And I remember we were talking about this a couple episodes ago where the baseball season used to feel like a marathon. And I think I said it two episodes ago. 162 is the perfect amount. And when we get to this level, I think the start of the season next year, I was looking at the schedule for next year. First game is going to be March 25th. And I know when you move them a little bit closer, you're not going to have the November baseball, the Mr. November stuff. But I think they figured it out. As long as you don't start the games on these colder weather stadiums, which they will do, they have no doubt about it. We may see some snow if you start the game earlier and earlier. But the schedule has been perfect this year. And I feel like there was no wear down. I know in a war attrition, and Bizzata, we mentioned him as the champion. He was texting me watching the Yankee game, and it was the first time you're watching a game on a Monday following what was how many weeks of a season, 24 weeks of just grinding every single week, picking up players and sweating injuries and setting your lineup and second guessing yourself. He's watching the game without the consequence. Of course, you're rooting for your favorite team, but there is this hangover that exists for fantasy owners that we don't really attribute. When the season's over, this is breath of sigh of relief where you're watching baseball that's meaningful, but now without the tinge of a fantasy outcome, which is so interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, for me, someone who's used to being in the playoffs and in the fantasy league late, not having that this year because I was out of the playoffs, and having the Mets absolutely go on an incredible downward trend at the same time, it was pretty miserable. I felt like a little baseball burnout. And then I'm like, all right, I'm a little excited about the Giants this year in football, so maybe that'll help me take my mind off it. And obviously that hasn't gotten off to a start that I want either. So hoping the Metsies can close the season here with a little positivity. Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty brutal last month or so of the baseball season for me. In the sports world in general, I'm also a Notre Dame football fan, and that hasn't gotten off to a good start either. So looking for a win here. But yeah, you're right. 162 for us, baseball nuts. I got to say, it doesn't feel too long for me. We love every bit of it. And the fact that in this playoff system, which we might talk about a little bit during this episode, there's still things very much undecided, like everywhere. I think that's more of an argument that with this amount of playoff teams, this amount of games is appropriate.
Yeah, as we get ready to talk about baseball, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about the Giants offense that we saw scoring 37 points and being just absolutely unstoppable for a little bit there, putting points on the board. Is that something you're seeing from this Giants offense in the future? Or is this just one of those things where they caught Dallas and it was one of those crazy games you're going to remember, and this is not the offense we're seeing? Or is it just Russell turning the clock back? What do you take from that loss? I know you have to take something positive, right?
I mean, I'll take number one thing I'll take is it's just way more entertaining to watch. Like I finally got to watch some entertaining football by my own team, even though the outcome sucked. I mean, part of that's a 64-yard field goal at the last second. That, like, what can you say about that? Like, that guy is an incredible weapon, Brandon Aubrey, back there for the Cowboys. Yeah, I'll have the wait and see approach because week one, the offense looked miserable. Offensive line looked miserable. Week two, Russ took a lot of shots downfield and connected, and Neighbors is a guy that can, sometimes I know he's down there somewhere. Let's see if he can go get it. And that backfired at the end, but had a lot of good things too. Wan'Dale Robinson also has had a quality season, seems like finally kind of coming into his own as an NFL player. Still not that much to speak of with the running game. A little better week two. Scatterbo got a lot of action there. Long touchdown at one point, or a long run to set up a touchdown. So there's some positives, but I still think the offensive line, no matter who you put behind them, it might struggle from time to time against a good defense. That game might just be an example of the Dallas defense just being no good. It was no good last year. We know they lost Parsons. I know I added Kenny Clark, which can be a positive, but I think their secondary can be exposed. So let's see how the Giants perform against the Chiefs in their first home game. The schedule doesn't get any easier. So, still hoping for something positive. I want November to come and to still have a reason to watch my team. I haven't had that in a long time.
Yeah, and I think if you guys are, and I'm not going to give betting advice, I would never tell anyone to put money on something, but NFL's not going to let the Chiefs go 0-3. They're just not. So if you want to put good money somewhere and you want to make some money back, I understand the spread's probably you have to put a lot of money down to get some money back, but including your Chiefs in a parlay somewhere to win straight up money line. I mean, I feel like that's the safest bet you can get all season. But let's head into our opening say and talk about really what's on our mind to start this episode. All right, so as we approach our opening say here, and this is making some news locally here in New York, of course, Anthony Volpe has been an absolute storyline all year. No way around it. His 2025 season has been a headache for most fans. It's been a point of contention with Aaron Boone's press conferences, his appearance on John Boy. And at this point, they've announced the shoulder injury. And I guess you can use it as an explanation. Fans that are skeptics can look at this as an excuse of why he's been playing the way he has been offensively, the throws that are being sailed off into the first baseline, not accurate. It's obvious the torn labrum has to play a part of this. I mean, it tanked his production. We know that his numbers pre-injury look like it was a step in the right direction. But on the other hand, the larger problem is even before the shoulder. I mean, you look at Volpe, he had not proven that he can't be, even when the glove wasn't an issue, when he was a Gold Glove level shortstop, he hasn't proven to be a bat that you can rely on. I mean, we saw spurts in the World Series, that big grand slam that almost brought them back. And everyone remembers the Aaron Judge catch, but Volpe was a big reason that game was even in the balance. Brian Cashman's show of faith here is predictable because you have to ask yourself, what else is he going to say? Similar to what you said about Jazz calling them the best team in the league. He has to say something positive about what has largely been his hand-picked shortstop. This is the heir apparent. I know that there's been some stops in between, but they've essentially anointed him the next Derek Jeter. That cloud has loomed very large over him. I understand that there's been a gap. Didi Gregorius played shortstop. There's been a lot of guys in between, but this is the hometown Jersey kid. They feel like there's a local flair to this. They wanted so badly to create this other type of star, and they're doubling down. And I think the other piece here, and I love it because the Yankees front office and Aaron Boone on a daily basis, they're being forced to consider Jose Caballero. And we haven't seen Volpe play since Tuesday. Caballero's earned a spot in this lineup. He's actually forcing a decision. He leads the league in stolen bases. He is a problem. Boone even went as far as saying that this might be a timeshare for the rest of the year. All right, so we can take this two different ways for my opening say. I have a real concern about Volpe here. I've had it all year. If this surgery for the torn labrum becomes necessary, the Yankees could lose Volpe for some of 2026, which is an issue because if this was an issue all year, medical looking at him, why wasn't this decision made quicker? And that's an issue for me because you look at him right now, I think you need some certainty. You're looking at 2 to 3 years of development for a player that's supposed to be crucial to your building block is not going to be there. And they're going to have championship expectations every year. And for the fact that they waited all this time and he was injured for him to quote unquote figure it out, just because he's cheap and you have the control and that's valuable, but it's only valuable if he performs. So I'm looking at this as the Yankees should be treating him going forward as nothing guaranteed. This should be used as depth. This is not a guaranteed thing that Volpe is going to be your centerpiece shortstop. And if someone's playing better than him, like pointing case Caballero, he needs to get the playing time. At this point, Volpe has to earn it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we just came off a game last night where Caballero actually had some gaffes very similar to things that have happened with Volpe. And of course, all Yankee fans are tweeting like, we can't escape it. It's like the curse of Volpe. It's just carrying over to the next guy. It might have just been one bad game, kind of things pile up. You hope so. But in a way, it's interesting because Caballero, yes, has played much better than Volpe. But Caballero during his career, especially the last couple of years, wherever he's been a few different places, has always been more of a complimentary part-time player. So it is not as easy as just taking this guy who's a part-time complimentary player who's playing really well and plugging him into a starting everyday role and expecting him to do exactly what he's been doing. It's not what happens. Some of the ugliness rears its head because he's out there more often. So you have to remember that. It's not necessarily going to be an instant upgrade constantly necessarily. Could it be? Sure, but it's definitely not a guarantee. It's not that simple. With that being said, I think it had to be done. I agree with the timeshare thing, and I agree with you, the injury and kind of, I guess, hiding. Here's the thing. They were either hiding it previously or they're using it as an excuse now to try to bring the noise and the temperature against Volpe down, right? They could be overblowing it now to try to make people have some sympathy and like get off the kid's back, or they hit it and they're in the wrong for doing that, or just never really tested how bad it actually was. And it may have had, as we have seen, some terrible, terrible effects. So I don't know, either they let it go on too long and they hurt the kid, or they're using it to kind of try to get people off his back right now. We don't really know. With that being said, you got to let Caballero play. As far as if Volpe is the shortstop going forward after this year, we'll figure that out at a different time. Right now, they have to figure out the groove of once this playoff picture starts, elimination games, right? Like, what are we doing with Volpe and Caballero? I know they love having Caballero as a guy off the bench, as a speed threat, as a guy you can pick off the bench and put in a big pinch running situation at any time. And there's something to be said for that, for sure. And Boone thinks about those things a lot. But I think it is telling that he has already made this move, because we've seen Boone in similar situations try all regular season to force the one guy down your throat and then not make a change until the playoffs start, which sometimes it's like it's too late. I'm glad they're giving this a try before the postseason starts.
And the one thing I will finish saying here is, yes, we are rooting for him to be a productive player. We want him to be the foundational piece the Yankees believe he could be. But at the end of the day, we had this conversation about Mike Elias and the Orioles. Sometimes it's okay to admit you're wrong. And the Yankees have been wrong about the development of Anthony Volpe this year, whether it's injury, partially playing a part of that. He has not blossomed into the player. And the fact that you continually try to force a square peg into a round hole with Anthony Volpe as a quote unquote superstar in the Bronx, it's derailing his production. It's derailing the fans' faith in the front office. And all those things can be true. The Yankees don't have to have their next heir apparent in Caballero. We know that's not him. As you mentioned, journeyman type of player. He's a depth piece, but it's okay as a championship team. We've saw plenty of them hoist the World Series trophy at the end of the playoffs that don't have a superstar heir apparent. That doesn't have to be what you're doing for 2026. Volpe, just because Volpe's not the guy doesn't mean the guy that's there is the guy, if that makes sense. We don't need the depth piece to realize and be he's the superstar we're building around. Sometimes it's okay just to go gap to gap and be like what Didi Gregorius was the Yankees. I honestly feel like Didi was the perfect person to replace Jeter, but he wasn't a superstar foundational piece the Yankees moved on from without any ill will from the fan base. Volpe right now just feels like the front office is doing him dirty because if he was hurt, as you said, and you're letting him go out there and this torn labrum, if we want to believe, we don't want to be naive and actually say he was hurt and they just figured it out. You're hurting Anthony Volpe, the player, because clearly something was wrong. And the fans, it kind of builds on itself. You mentioned just like this curse of Volpe, but when you start thinking about it, I mean, Chuck Knobloch in the Bronx got the yips. He couldn't make a throw from second to first, and it starts to build on it. Think of Rick Ankiel being a pitcher. It starts to, if you've ever played darts, if anyone's been in a bar and you're playing darts and you just start thinking about forcing the dart and you start like sailing it, it is a real thing. And Anthony Volpe is dealing with such a high level. The front office needs to really assess how they're looking at players and sometimes admitting they're wrong. We don't have to double down and say, we're seeing something you're not seeing. Sometimes it's okay to be like, yeah, we were wrong about Anthony Volpe. We thought the assessment was different. Treat your fans as educated because we know the New York Yankee fans are one of the more educated fan bases in all of sports. So treat them as such.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to, I believe it was 2 years ago. Brian Cashman got into this big like argument during like a press gathering outside of spring training, I think, with Joel Sherman. Joel Sherman was just like kind of questioning, like, is Volpe really the player you guys are making him out to be, or is there a possibility he's not? And this wasn't before this season. I believe it was before last season. And Cashman got so defensive. And and it was very public. It was all over the place, especially in New York. I wonder if that moment, how defensive he was, still plays a part in them for the longest time trying to kind of push Volpe and keep him up there and defend him. But you're right. That stuff I think has backfired to a degree with Anthony Volpe. We'll see. I mean, I grew up a Yankee fan, obviously probably idolized Derek Jeter. You want to think that he is the mentally tough dude that the Yankees and Yankee fans are going to need him to be. But you hope that the franchise didn't do more damage than good here.
We watch them do it to players over and over again. We don't have to get into the Gary Sanchez piece of it all. Like they have
very
done,
similar.
They have done a lot of wrong to players as they're developing. And until they can develop a player that's not an alien like an Aaron Judge, they have shown that their player production has been lacking. There needs to be some swift change where if Spencer Jones winds up being the player, I will eat my words. But you go from these top prospects, from Miguel Andujar to Gary Sanchez, these players don't result in who they're supposed to be, who they're advertised as, and they'll always point to Judge of saying we developed superstar. No, he fell into your lap, and Judge is just an alien on Earth playing baseball.
Right. No doubt about it. And this kind of goes into my opening say here, if we can kind of put these two together, and the word shortstop and alien goes with this guy. I want to talk about Elly De La Cruz for a minute here because a number jumped out to me that is pretty startling. I love Elly De La Cruz, one of his biggest fans, one of his biggest defenders, fantasy owner since he was a prospect still. One of the things I like the most about him is I just feel like every year he's getting incrementally better in a lot of ways and kind of cutting his strikeout rate down, things like that. But recently, it's been a big struggle. The Reds, to me, I look at that roster and I look at how bad the Mets have been for a long time now. And I think, how the hell have the Reds not caught them? Like, it's if I'm a Cincinnati fan, I am so disappointed that I still have not caught the Mets, and maybe I won't. And now you're actually behind a couple other teams, the Diamondbacks and the Giants. Elly De La Cruz, how about this number? This is nuts. 1 home run in his last 71 games played. Not 71 plate appearances, 71 games. Now, Elly's game is a all-around game. Speed, right? He can hit for extra bases, easy triples, take the extra base, and just create havoc on the base paths. But he does have massive raw power. We've seen it. He still apparently has just not quite locked it or unlocked it consistently at the major league level. Since June 24th, 352 slugging percentage, only a 3.9% barrel rate, which I think is interesting. That's compared to 16.2% before that. 51.5% ground ball rate this season. This is another reason the game of baseball is so hard, because a lot of times when you work on cutting something down like a strikeout rate, other things pop up. Now I'm hitting the ball on the ground too much. I'm not barreling the ball, right? Exit velocities might be going down, things like that. I heard a lot of people, certain Seattle fans, complain in the first half that Julio Rodriguez should not be concentrating on cutting his strikeout rates down because a lot of these things went down with it that we're seeing with Ellie. But Ellie was like, when he first came up, a super high strikeout rate guy, like between 35 and 40% at the minor league level too. So it's been a point of emphasis. You got to find the middle ground. I'm not going to sit here and say the Reds are not in playoff position solely because Ellie De La Cruz. I just don't think that's true. But there's a part of me that thinks, when you get to that position where you're just a few games out of a playoff spot, you do need your stars to be stars to make that final push. Like if the Mets are going to get the playoffs and keep this playoff spot for these next 2 weeks, they're going to need Juan Soto to step up. Pete Alonso hit a big walk-off home run, thank God. Maybe it saved the season. Maybe it turned around. We won't know until, another week or two. Lindor is going to need to step up and have big moments. Same can be said for Ellie De La Cruz. He is the guy there. He's still super young. He's an incredible specimen. I think long-term career-wise, he's going to be fine. But that number to me is staggering. And to go relate it to the Volpe thing, there is a part of me that wonders if they're maybe not telling us about a slight nagging injury that is playing a part. I mean, those splits from June 24th on are just kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, no, I think that's something to take an alert approach on, looking at what is wrong with Ellie, because the power outage, that is unlike him. I think you could probably, I don't even have to dive deep into the numbers. I would say over 71 games, I don't think at any level he's ever gone without multiple home runs. And maybe it's the approach, but heavy does lie the crown of the superstar. And like he's proved in every way he is a superstar, and the Reds do need him. The fact that they're sitting at 500, the Mets went through an 8-game losing streak. They were free falling. The Reds, not even one day, had jumped the Mets. They had the opportunity to, if they played 600 baseball just out of spurt, which they've had at some point this year, they've been very Jekyll and Hyde this year. The Reds had an opportunity to take hold. And you have to imagine, like, if you just add the production on some of these games and go through the box scores of each of these Cincinnati Reds games that they've been dropping, losing 5 out of 10, that's, a 500 baseball team, literally and figuratively, being 75 and 75 as we speak. A little more offense, a little more power, a little bit more of the oomph that Ellie De La Cruz is supposed to be giving you would help take you over the edge, because they're playing 500 baseball with essentially Ellie De La Cruz being a non-factor, and that is troubling. So if there is an injury to discuss, that's something that the Reds need to figure out if they're approaching, because it is unacceptable as we see the Arizona Diamondbacks hop them, who were sellers at the deadline. This is not a team that's supposed to be in contention, and just as egregious as it is for the Mets to be sitting here and free falling and somehow surviving, the Reds themselves, a team that can be sitting here and talking about the future and be happy about the young team. Terry Francona, how many years does Terry Francona have left in baseball that he's willing to just punt on a playoff spot, to have a swing at October one more time? Yes, he'll be there for a few more years, but this was an opportunity that was waiting for the Reds, and I think Ellie needs to be held accountable a little bit for it. I'm not sure what the Cincinnati media is talking. I'm not sure if he has too much good grace to be criticized. I would be very curious on how they're approaching this.
It's just a staggering number, 1 home run in 71 games. A guy of that size with that raw power, even if he's not swinging it well, you think he's going to run into a couple more by accident at part with it. But if he's playing with an injury, I'm sure it's because of the playoff push. And I'm doubting it's a major injury, but there could be something that's definitely nagging at him. I mean, the K percentage for the year is down 5.5% from last year, 25.8% for the year, which for a guy like Ellie, I'm happy with. His first year in the league back in 2023, 33.7%. But unfortunately, I mean, you got hard hit percentages a little bit down for the year by about 2.2. Exit velocity is slightly down. Barrel percentage is down by like 2%. So there's this give and take, and it's not a simple, I'm going to stop doing this. Sometimes I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to change my swing a little to cut down the strikeout rates. It saps some power, makes you hit the ball on the ground too much. And if you're the star of that team, I think they're still trying to figure out, like, what type of player does Ellie need to be? Is he the centerpiece, star, slugs, and speed? Or are they going to figure out maybe he's the 1A piece and they still are looking for that A guy? I know some people might be listening to that, rolling their eyes like, come on, he's so young, he's incredible. Again, I'm one of his biggest fans. I just wonder, I mean, he's still so young. I do feel like there's a part of it where they're still trying to figure out what exactly his game is. What does he need to focus on the most? Maybe they're going to want him to cut down on the stolen bases, save his legs, and get into his legs at bat a little more and hit for more power. Maybe that's what the Reds need. I think they probably thought in that ballpark that he would be an easy 30 home run guy year after year, no matter what. And it just hasn't turned out that way yet.
Yeah, I mean, sitting at 19 home runs, 82 RBIs, and 35 stolen bases, if you would put a piece of tape over his name and had to guess his stat line, give a whole bunch, and say at the beginning of the year, which one of these will be Elly De La Cruz? And, hasn't hit a home run since July 31st. And as you mentioned, one since June 24th. It is a problem, and they got to figure it out soon because he is essential to what they're building and what they will continue to do in Cincinnati. But let's head to our meat of the order and talk about the rest of the news around baseball.
We have the meat.
All right, here we are for the meat of the order and a big story in Toronto. And we're going to be talking about a thematic notion here about good vibes and some of these players that are being come up or could be a team motif like we're going to see with the Phillies and we're going to see with the Diamondbacks, building on something which sometimes becomes contagious on your run through October. You can go with the squirrels that appear or other type of good luck charms. We saw the Minnesota Twins use the good luck sausage at the beginning of the year. Did not work out well for them. They're trying to capture something like the Mets had locally here with Grimace. There's something about the magic that those things entail. Point being, sometimes calling up a player is just what the doctor ordered. And Trey Yesavage of the Toronto Blue Jays seemed to fall straight from the heavens to the Blue Jays. He pitched last night, leaving the Rays hitters just absolutely floored. One of the most electric debuts in all of Toronto's history. He had struck out 9 batters over the course of 5 innings, which is a franchise record from an MLB debut. And for just 69 pitches, he was just dazzling to watch. If you watch the highlights here, he lived up to the billing of really high expectations. This is coming in as Toronto's #1 prospect. He went through the minors, just absolutely blitzing people, 160 strikeouts in 90 innings. And his reputation came preceding him. And very rarely do we see those things live up. And I think this can be contagious and kind of carry Toronto into what is supposed to be a promising October over there.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what they expect from him postseason, if anything. And we'll talk. I think maybe we'll talk about that at the end of this conversation. But just to throw some more numbers at you, you mentioned the 9 strikeouts, 19 whiffs on the night, swings and misses. At 1.5 straight strikeouts. How about this? This is rare. He was drafted last year, I believe, out of East Carolina. All right, so a quick climb up to the majors. He went through 5 different levels this year. He faced 394 batters over 5 levels. He struck out 161 of them. I mean, that's an eyebrow raiser right there. Quite a rise within a year's time. Pretty incredible. The splitter is just a filthy, filthy pitch. In the minor leagues, 61% whiff rate on that pitch, just ridiculous. And the splitter for the last couple years has kind of been the it pitch, where if you can throw a good one, you have a good shot at having a good out pitch and good strikeout rate. I think it's very interesting to go back to what I said at first, what his role in the postseason will be. Because, I mean, maybe he gets 2 more starts, maybe, before the postseason starts. I will say this, a veteran-laden rotation. What a learning tree to sit under. The likes of Shane Bieber, the likes of Kevin Gossman, who's outpitched for years, and what once made him a star is the splitter, split finger. Max Scherzer, Chris Bassett, Jose Barrios. Like, all of a sudden, you throw this kid in with them. Pretty cool. There's a part of me that thinks maybe he ends up being just a complete weapon out of the bullpen in a big spot. Like, oh, bases loaded, 1 out, go strike the next 2 guys out. We know you can do it, right? Could they put him in the starting rotation? Sure, but with those veterans I just named, I would not be surprised at all for him to be an absolute weapon out of the bullpen for Toronto in playoff series.
I would imagine if I had to conceptualize how he would be used, it would be like Andrew Miller in his prime years with Cleveland, just coming out of the pen and just being high leverage, whatever the big spot is, you bring him in. You mentioned the 19 total whiffs. 11 on 14 swings were at his splitter, and only 10 pitchers this season have managed 11 whiffs on a splitter, and half of those belong to Kevin Gausman. So the fact that he joined that company in one night just shows that the stuff is really special. You look at the mechanics, that's part of the mystique here. One of the highest release points in the game. and everything that comes out of his hand looks like it's coming out of the sky. 95-mile-per-hour fastball. They're saying that it looks like it's coming downhill. The splitter's diving directly into the dirt. And the slider, which already looks like a legitimate slider, which, as we hear for these younger pitchers, it's a harder pitch to get control of. It cuts late in the zone. You have the batters. And again, we don't want to over exaggerate 69 pitches over the course of the first start we've seen. But I mean, the Rays hitters were guessing wrong all night, almost every single time. So there's something here that is confusing. Just as hitters, they find the book on them. Maybe teams are going to be game planning and finding a way to figure out his stuff. But as we know, if there's movement, if there is dive on these pitches, he could be a weapon, especially in short bursts. If you bring him out of the bullpen and you're not able to see him over the course of 1, 2, 3 times over in the lineup, he could be an absolute difference maker for the Blue Jays, who are seeking their first World Series championship since 1993. I think they smell blood here. I think they want to capitalize on what has been largely a special year. I mean, you look at just in general. I mean, right now, the Toronto Blue Jays, essentially, things would have to go wrong for them not to win the East. They're sitting at, I believe it's 5 games at this point above the Yankees, and they are ready and willing to take on that championship and bring it home, hang the banner there, etc. But this is a glimpse of their future. You go back to Vlad Jr. debuting back in 2019. The Blue Jays were still building, and Yesavage is part of the piece here. So it's kind of, in my opinion, kind of poetic to watch this team be built, because I understand Bo Bichette's trying to get over that knee injury, and we've seen them get a second opinion, which you're hoping that there's some positive lining there of that maybe he can come back to this lineup. But to watch a guy like Vlad Jr. competing and contribute at a big level, and then you got a guy who's just recently drafted, as you mentioned, with Yesavage, they have the chance to be one of the best teams in the American League. And yeah, maybe the American League's not the National League this year. This could be a jolt of energy that can have them take the next step over the rest of the teams. Maybe we'll talk about Detroit in a little bit. Maybe Tarek Skubal coming back and getting good news. That will be the jolt that they need. But I think it's going to be a weapons game of saying who's going in with the best vibes and who can carry the momentum. Because all of a sudden, the rubber's going to meet the road, and these teams are going to need to play meaningful baseball. And I feel like the Blue Jays have been doing that all year, despite them struggling in the midsection of the season.
Yeah, I mean, don't be surprised if you look up sometime in October and see Yesavage on the mound for the 9th. Like, Jeff Hoffman has really struggled back there for them. So they're going to find a way to use Yesavage as a weapon. And I really, the more I think about it, I could see it in the bullpen. And yeah, I could even see it in the 9th inning to close out a game. I really could, if he's that electric. I think he is. And just to go the nickname route, I've heard the name Ice Tray is used for him a lot, which is fine. We here table setters, or I mean, I don't know if Steve's embraced it yet, but I would like to go with the Macho Man Trey Yesavage. All right, now I know there's someone out there who's probably going to tweet at us or something and say it's actually pronounced like Yesavage, and then all the nickname's going to be ruined. But for now, we're going with Macho Man Trey Yesavage. And how about this? I put this out there. This list of names: Trey Yesavage, Cam Schlittler, Connolly Early now all of a sudden, Peyton Tolley, Nolan McLean, Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tong, Jacob Mizorowski, Cade Horton, throw Emmett Sheehan in there, even though he's not technically a rookie. That's a list of guys, pitchers only, young pitchers, mostly rookies, that could have a role in the postseason. It's a pretty long list of guys. Now, varying degrees, right? A guy like Peyton Tolley, maybe not much of a role, right? Maybe not even on the roster. We don't know yet with what's been going on with him. A guy like Yesavage, we just talked about what we think he might be doing. Guy like Nolan McLean, if the Mets make it, could be the ace. Like, it's pretty crazy to see that, and we're not even including position players in that list. If you go that route, you have a much longer list. So, again, we say it a lot on this show, but with the youth and the talent of the youth and how much quicker people are calling them up now, game's in a really fun place.
So the San Francisco Giants are betting on the aforementioned youth to jolt their playoff push. They're also sitting at 75 and 75, 2 games back of that last wildcard spot. And they announced the promotion of Bryce Eldridge, which is one of their top hitting prospects. And this was ahead of the series starting with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And he just turned 21 next month, or will be turning 21 next month. And this is not typical, but I mean, he's ranked the number 15th prospect in all of baseball by CBS Sports, 6'7". He's a lefty, first round pick, number 16 overall out of Virginia High School in 2023. And he's climbed from AA to the big leagues on really just the power bat. And he's drawn a lot of national attention. People are really excited about what he's been able to do. So looking at some of the numbers here across 100 games split between AA and AAA, he slashed 259, 331, 513, 25 home runs, and 21 doubles. And what stands out a little bit more than just the actual raw numbers is the metrics: 95.7 miles per hour exit velocity and 63.5 hard hit rate. Ball struck 95 miles per hour or harder, which puts him in the elite company in all of MLB as far as prospects go. And people believe, all the highest minds in baseball, that his power will translate against major league pitching. And I think we're looking at Eldred's arrival right now is no accident for the Giants, losers of 3 straight. They're doing their best. They're trailing that last wild card spot, as I mentioned, by 2 games. They're trying their best to fill a glaring weakness that has been all year. First base, we understand Rafi Devers got a cup of coffee there, but that's not his home. They're trying their best to find an answer because they have a league worst 614 OPS, which is traditionally an offense heavy position. You need first base to contribute. And if Bryce Eldridge is being asked to get some experience here, but I think he's trying to be an immediate upgrade. And I think he is, unfortunately, for the Giants. This is a guy who's going to be expected a lot to be a guy that's going to contribute at a big level if they're going to make a difference and be one of those last playoff teams.
Yeah, I don't think this was the Giants' original plan. I think they're pretty set on next year, whether it be the beginning of next year or early next year. But sometimes there's a need, right? You mentioned Rafi being there for a little while. Dom Smith had been a pleasant surprise at first base for them, and then I think got banged up on a crazy stretch at first the other day. I don't know how bad that injury is. But there's a need here. And you look at the middle of that lineup now, like, it's appealing. You got Rafi in there. You got the veteran Matt Chapman in there. You got Jung-Ho Lee, who, at times can be very, very good. You got Eldridge there now, if he can live up to his power bat. 70 grade power. You mentioned it. Elite hard hit rate, barrel rate, exit velocity. So it's all there. My only concern, to see if it translates to the major leagues, is his home ballpark. Well documented, Oracle Park, not necessarily a hitter-friendly park. Second worst park factor, according to Baseball Savant, for left-handed hitters over the last 3 years. So not just, this year, over the last 3 years. He hit a shot last night. This was in Arizona. It wasn't at home, but hit a shot last night that would have been a home run, 23 out of 30 ballparks. Gave you kind of a flash of what he can do and how hard he can hit the ball. So, I have seen a lot of opposite field home runs for him. So maybe that helps him at Oracle, not having to go all the way, over into the water. But that would be my only concern. But again, just really cool to see these guys that we've seen on these lists, these prospect lists, kind of get these moments in big spots. 3 guys on the Mets called up pitching staff right away, playoff race. We just talked about Yesavage, division crown race. Bryce Eldridge now thrown right at first base to kind of go do something, not just get a cup of coffee in a race. Sal Stewart on the Reds, same thing. We could go on and on. It's just really cool to see these guys called up, and teams are not afraid of the moment for these guys.
Yeah, and it forces the hands of front offices. I think fan bases, they're seeing that there's an opportunity to sneak into the playoffs. And as we all discuss, we've heard Brian Cashman say it outwardly here in New York, that the playoffs are a crapshoot. So if you just get in and figure it out, you have an opportunity to win a championship. And how could you pass it up? And for what they invested in the trade for Rafi Devers, this was supposed to be a win now season. And would they sign off on sitting 75 and 75? I think they would want a redo as far as the middle of the season goes, but they're right there in the hunt. And this is the results of what has been an altered playoff system. It's forcing teams and front offices to take these progressions a lot more seriously. That you mentioned, Bryce Eldridge, the plan was probably start of 2026 coming out of spring training, let him start the season with the big league club, but they need him right now because the opportunity is there. If we were living in a world where we didn't have expanded playoffs and one last playoff team in the wild card, they would be far out right now. San Diego would be sitting there 5 games up with 2 weeks to play. All these teams, the Diamondbacks, the Reds, the Giants, they all say, well, we have nothing to play for, so let's look for, maybe Eldridge would get a cup of coffee the last week of the season just to kind of give him the exposure, but he's playing meaningful baseball right now. And that's a good thing for everybody. Let's keep that in mind.
Yeah, good thing for the entertainment value. Not great for Dom Smith, but great for the entertainment value. I'm sure the Giants fans are psyched to see him. And we'll see. Who knows? Maybe he has a huge 2 weeks and becomes an instant star. Maybe he struggles like young guys do sometimes and has a better start next year. But it'll be fun to watch either way.
So we were all holding our breath last week, and especially the Detroit Tigers fans, and Tarek Skubal, the fact that he had blossomed into one of baseball's premier pitchers, and he's the front runner right now for the AL Cy Young Award. Maybe Garrett Crochet is making a last push here, but it's going to be certainly interesting to see. He left to start against the Marlins after just 3 1/3, tightness in his left side, so everyone's panicking, thinking the worst. He had allowed 4 runs before exiting, which was his shortest and by far his roughest outing in a lot of weeks here. And just the sight of seeing him walk off the field cast a big shadow, not just for Tigers fans, because I think people, if you're a fan of baseball and the way Tarek Skubal pitches, he is must-see TV. And when you are appointment viewing a start from Tarek Skubal, you want him in October in big moments. But less than 2 weeks remaining in the season, the Tigers are clearly locked in a fight for what they're trying to crown as a World Series championship over there. It's been a long time since he's been there. He's been their anchor. But we got a sigh of relief here, Devin, undergoing some imaging. He was cleared of any structural damage. We got John Morosi confirming this, that he's expected to make his next start on Thursday at Comerica Park against the Guardians. He's resumed a regular throwing program, which the exit has been, all accounts, been precautionary, not catastrophic. We can go through his numbers, but I think the breath of sigh relief is really just that he's okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, we all know how good Tarek Skubal is. I don't, like you said, I don't think he's one of those guys we need to list the numbers for, right? Cy Young type of pitcher year in and year out. To me, sigh of relief is the right term. Big sigh of relief. You just hope it's not something that lingers, right? Because sometimes it's like, all right, no big injury, but we got to be careful here that it doesn't turn into something big. To me, a little bit of a reminder when you see him grab his side and leave, a little bit of a reminder of like how mediocre in my mind, or how, I don't want to be too harsh here, but a little bit uninspiring the rest of this Detroit rotation is. I know they haven't been bad. Casey Mize has had some very good moments, his best season by far. Jack Flaherty, numbers aren't great, but he's had his moments, and we know he's got a lot of postseason experience now. But overall, I look at that pitching and even the bullpen, and I'm like, not bad, but like, do I think that's going to make a run in the playoffs? Even the offense kind of comes and goes, and the Detroit Tigers to me have been like the forgotten team in the second half. Like, I feel like no one talks about them as a team. We hear Skubal's name a lot, but kind of forget about them as a team. They've been kind of mediocre for a while. It's even crazy when you look in the standings that Cleveland is as close to them as they are. They're not super close. They're probably not going to catch them, but like at one point, this division looked over in like June. And the fact that they were not the first team to clinch their division, and the Phillies actually were, is a little surprising. And I think paints a picture of like, yeah, they haven't been great for a while. They haven't been bad, but they've kind of just been hanging out. So Skubal, the point is they need Skubal to be healthy, and they're going to need Tarek Skubal to have an all-time postseason run. I mean, in the vein of like Madison Bumgarner doing a little bit of everything for the Giants. Like, that's the type of postseason they're going to need out of him for them to make a run, in my opinion. I just they don't quite have that momentum they had last year. We talked about this a year or two ago with the Phillies, and we're going to have a Phillies conversation. So this kind of, when we get there, it relates to it a little bit. The Phillies now, if you look at their postseason record, they're there every year. But the first year they got there was a surprise. The year I think they fired Girardi, Rob Thompson takes over. All of a sudden they make a crazy run. They end up in the World Series. They lose. Next year, now they're not a surprise. They make it to the NLCS. They lose. Last year, they get blitzed by the Mets, lose in the NLDS after winning the division. So they've actually gone backwards. And we talk about this. Is it better to make a crazy, unexpected run in the second half and take that insane momentum into the postseason and ride it? Or is it better to be the team that is confident and is good and in first place all year and might get a little lazy and a little bit like, all right, let's get to the postseason now and then go in and have trouble turning it back on? We talk about this with the buys, whether the buys are good or bad, because they kind of can take momentum away sometimes. So I think there's a little bit of that with the Tigers this year. Like, this is an early prediction for me. Even with Skubal, I would not be shocked to see the Tigers be bounced early in the postseason this year. So there's just something, it's more of a feeling thing. It's not of a number thing. It's just, honestly, it's a feeling thing for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And seeing them sit 20 games over 500, like you said, and leave for the Central, and Cleveland is giving them bang for the buck. They're still far back from the division crown, as you mentioned, 6.5 back, but winners of 9 of 10. They're 3 games back from a wild card spot. So some credit to Cleveland sitting 4 games or 7 games above 500 in their own right. Detroit definitely didn't make it easy on fans this year. They should have ran away and hide a long time ago. They should have clinched the Central and been able to maybe even shut Skubal down and say like, all right, well, we'll shut you down, get ready for October, or just let you get some rest here. But they've had to play meaningful baseball all year because they have no breathing room. They finally do have a little bit of breathing room as they righted the ship. As I said, 20 games above 500. Wouldn't shock me at all to see them get bounced either. They don't have that feel. And I guess you can really have a diagnostic conversation. Like, is it better to be this shocking team that pushes through and then you hope that you get that first ring in a long time built on that? But to go into the season with the expectations, because when people came in to 2025, the Tigers were the favorite of the Central. The Tigers were a favorite in the American League, especially as damaged as the American League has been. To repeat it makes it even more impressive what Skubal's done, because there's the expectation. It is impressive that Detroit's there, but there isn't the same magic. And we're going to talk about the magic here that for the next two teams here that's kind of developing. And we're going to talk about the D-backs here. And from all accounts, Blaze Alexander has crowned this as Virgo season. So everyone's like, what does this mean? What does Virgo season mean in Arizona? Well, we had him get this imaging on the bruised left elbow, and jokingly, or maybe just tongue in cheek, had said he'd undergone a horoscope. And for whatever reason, that has caught fire in the clubhouse, that now they're all talking about this. And little things like this, as I mentioned, catch fire, and then teams can gain some momentum. And we talked about the D-backs being sellers, getting rid of Suarez, and on it goes about who they got rid of. But the fact they're sitting a game and a half back from a wild card spot, and they're keeping their playoff hopes alive. Last night, 8-1 win over the Giants, moving into the final wildcard spot, like shouting distance. Zach Gallen was setting the tone, struck out Willie Adames in the first inning, his 1,000th strikeout in a D-backs uniform, which is crazy to even say. He joins only Randy Johnson and Brandon Webb in franchise history that hit that mark. So kind of shows what Zach Gallen has done in that uniform, understated. And then obviously the 6-run, 6th inning, they hit for a cycle as a team and really showed just the collective strength across what they can do when they make a run. We saw them make a run surprisingly 2 years back when they made that World Series run. Like, would it shock anybody to see them get hot right now? 11 games left, 8 of them at home against postseason caliber opponents. And the Diamondbacks, as we know, Tony Lavulo has them playing very precision, detail-oriented baseball. They're resilient. They're very much alive, and don't give them any oxygen, because I think this is a team that could be very, very dangerous. We'll talk about our Twitter polls and conversations. They stand out to me. Despite selling off some pieces and Suarez is in the middle of that lineup, they're playing like a club that believes in its story. And I think they have unfinished business. And when you have a Corbin Carroll in that lineup built on some of the other auxiliary pieces, this could be something that is very, very special building in Arizona if they can get in.
Yeah, not to mention Ketel Marte. And how about my guy, Geraldo Perdomo? His season, we've talked about him a few times. I've tweeted about him, I feel like, a lot lately. This guy, the biggest breakout season I feel like we've seen all year that needs to be talked about more. Only 25 years old still. It's not like this guy is like 29, 30, and he's just all of a sudden having this outlier season. I'm trying to figure out on a fan, just to go aside for a minute, and I'll get back to the Diamondbacks as a whole. I've been trying to figure out. So to give you a picture here, my team, Ellie De La Cruz, Gunnar Henderson are on my squad, and they have been 2 of my keepers for a while. We have a system, I'm not going to get into it, of what kind of players we can keep, different years and things like that. But 2 shortstops, so I have to keep that in mind. We do have 3 utility spots, so it's okay to keep 2 guys at the same position. But I also have Perdomo this year, who I think picked up at some point in the year and never let go for good reason, who would be like a last round keeper for me. I'm just trying to think in the fantasy world, and I tweeted this out and tagged our friends Eric Cross, fantasy expert, Ross Jensen, Doc, who has not gotten back yet, Chris Welsh. I just wanted their opinions on, like, where does this guy rank next year in that great category of fantasy shortstops? And you can check that tweet out if you want to see their responses, so I don't go off on too much of a tangent here. But he has been a godsend for that team. To me, the biggest reason they are actually other than the Mets just shitting the bed, the biggest reason the Diamondbacks are still in this is Perdomo. Corbin Carroll's great. Ketel Marte is great. Some pitchers have stepped up. I do think the bullpen's really, really bad. And if they did make the playoffs, it'd be pretty ugly pretty quick, to be honest. But you and I have always liked the Diamondbacks. Preseason predictions, both of us had them going far. Both of us talked about them being maybe the biggest pain in the ass for the Dodgers. But with that being said, Gallen, just to go back to him for a minute, it was a little, not strange, but surprising to see the Diamondbacks hold on to him. They dealt Merrill Kelly. He's a free agent at the end of the year, Gallen, that is. Most people expected him to be gone. The prices were extremely high for relief pitchers and starting pitchers. So it might have just been the case of that, not the Diamondbacks being like, we purposely want to hold on to him. We don't really know. But last 9 starts, 2.68 ERA, 1.01 whip. The strikeouts are still down, but it's very clear why he's been able to turn it around. Much better job of not walking as many people, limiting hard contact, getting the ball on the ground. So Zach Gallen has shown he's still a very effective pitcher. It kind of reignited his free agency. I do wonder, I mean, obviously the Diamondbacks now at this point would be expected to, off the proposed a qualifying offer to Gallen. I don't know what that number is going to be this year, but usually it's around 20 million for a year, somewhere along there. My guess, especially with a good second half, would be that he turns it down. I don't know if they'd be willing to offer him like a 3-4 year deal to actually get him to stay long term. But if he turns it down, the Diamondbacks get a draft pick out of it. So either way, the Diamondbacks are in a good spot with him. And remember, their ownership has been very clear that they want to compete each year. So they might not want a long rebuild. They still have some very, very good young players there. They want to compete right away. But for me, a cool story. It surprised me to suddenly see them back in the thick of things. They do own tiebreakers over the Mets right now, because remember, there's no game 163. This is the second week in a row we're reminding you of that. It's just based on tiebreakers. First tiebreaker is head-to-head record. Second, I believe, if say you're tied with the head-to-head record, is your winning percentage in your own division. So I believe the Diamondbacks and the Mets split this year, but the Diamondbacks have the better division winning percentage. They own, I think they are one game up on the Giants right now as far as win-loss record head-to-head. They have 2 more games against the Giants, so that could obviously change. The rest of the wild card teams, the Reds own a tiebreaker over the Diamondbacks. Very confusing to get into all of it. The one thing I will say is the Diamondbacks' remaining schedule, other than these next 2 games against the Giants, which are difficult enough. I don't know if it's this order, so don't quote me on it, but I believe Padres, Dodgers, Phillies. That might be out of order. That's maybe, I don't know winning percentage-wise, but maybe the toughest end of the year schedule. So if they make it in, they are going to earn every piece of it. I'll pose this question to you very quickly. Teams like the Giants and Diamondbacks now that are basically 500 teams, do you see this as a good thing for baseball, that they are within 2 weeks of the season ending still in a playoff race? Or do you see it as like a slight negative?
I think you have to say it's a good thing just for baseball in general, just for competitive games and watching on TV. The ballparks are filled up and people have a reason to believe. I guess you can have that same conversation we were talking about with the Marlins competing, and the Diamondbacks essentially sold. I mean, the Tigers did the same thing last year. It did incentivize them to go out there and kind of put the building blocks in place and start to really put the infrastructure. And I don't think the Diamondbacks, even the fact that they were sellers this year, ever really doubted that this core was their core. I do believe that they believe in those superstar players that are underneath the surface, really largely Corbin Carroll. I think they believe that this team has a chance to be competitive for a long time. And this season, similar to a lot of the other teams in the league, just didn't get off to the right stop. And there was a lot of injuries that played a part. Their bullpen, as you mentioned, just was egregious. And those things are crapshoots. But I think you could put some negative spin on this, but largely it's what baseball wants. They wanted these teams to be competing at the final hour here in the games. And one thing I will say about these teams, Torey Lovullo, as I mentioned before, he had a press conference following this game, and he talked about this group, and he's going to say things like they compete hard, that they believe in each other. But the biggest thing I took from this is that he had mentioned that they rediscovered what it's like to really just have fun together. He mentioned that there's laughter in the clubhouse, there's energy, and that can be contagious. That can be infectious in a very positive way. Good vibes do somehow carry onto the field, whether analytics want to believe it or not. The galvanization of a team like the Diamondbacks can be dangerous for opponents. And you got to remember, the Diamondbacks, like the Tigers last year, when you're sellers at the deadline, essentially you're playing with house money. This is a team that was written off for dead. The epitaph on the tombstone was written. Everyone in Arizona eulogized this season. It was over. So the fact that they're playing these games, and yes, they have tough opponents, and we'll talk about the Phillies. The Phillies clinched the East. Are they going to play differently now? Of course, they're playing for seeding and all that stuff. Maybe they're approaching things. The cat is fat now. They're going to sit and rest and get ready. There's something about building on the energy, whether it's stupid like getting a horoscope and a misspell. You create shirts and you're rocking different type of motifs of the season. I wouldn't want to see the D-backs in the playoffs. I just wouldn't. Like if I'm a National League team, we mentioned some threats. They, to me, are dangerous. I don't care how it shakes out. I don't care about the numbers in the regular season. This is a team that already showed when the expectations are minimal. They got to a World Series a few years ago. Do not give them a shot, because if they get there, they're going to be a team that will be reckoned with, and they're going to wreck someone's fucking future. They're really going to look at a team and just say, "Oh, you had all these plans for October. Guess what? We're in house now. The snakes are here."
Well, I only agree with you. Here's the thing. I think their roster is like easily worse than any team that is in the playoff picture right now. But if they are able to make it going through that schedule I just listed, Giants, Phillies, Padres, Dodgers, not necessarily in that order, they're going to be raging hot and insanely confident. Because to make the playoffs, like they're going to have to win 2 of 3 in most of those series, most likely.
Yep.
unless all the other teams, Reds, Giants, and Mets, are just completely tanking. Most likely, someone's going to be playing decent ball along with them. So it's going to be challenging. But yeah, I agree with you. If they make it, it's going to be earned at this point based on this end of the year schedule. And at that point, you're not going to want to see a team that's been through that schedule.
Well, we saw two teams clinch this week that were teams that we essentially knew were playoff teams for a long time. Let's start with the Phillies, where they revealed themselves to be who they are. They've carried through this division lead. They had a tight race for a little bit with the Mets, and then they made this a laugher at this point. They're up 12 and a half games. They wound up clinching the division, their second straight NL East division crown. They did it against a formidable opponent, doing it in Los Angeles against the Dodgers. Some stories in Philly, they were talking about the mechanics on the airplane, that they didn't get to bed until 2 a.m. and all the things. And they were exhausted facing the Dodgers on short rest. So it would have been easy for them to use that as an excuse, but no, they get out there. Kyle Schwarber launches 53rd home run in the first inning, sets the tone for them. And they had to kind of withstand the Dodgers. Back and forth game, really good game last night. If you look at some of the lesser known Phillies that are contributing, which is a good sign for October: Otto Kemp, Bryson Stott, Weston Willis, some clutch hits that turned into really a back and forth, really good game. Bryce Harper delivered the blow that really mattered, 8th inning home run. So if he gets hot, he's a guy that we know has ice in his veins when it really matters. His celebration to me kind of speaks to this team. And you look at this team, and I mentioned the fun that the D-backs are having, and sometimes all it takes is a theme. We have this stuff at Harrison Bader's mantra. Did you see this stuff that he has a tattoo that says "What a gift" on his arm?
I may have missed this one.
So he has "What a gift" tattooed on his arm. Harrison Bader, depth piece. We know what Bader can do. We've seen him in our favorite lineups. Now it's become just like energy to embrace team. They have shirts they're all wearing that says "What a gift" and it has Harrison Bader on it. Right now, they have kind of used this as kind of like perspective, some gratitude. Some players have talked about this, embracing even life's inconvenience as quote unquote blessings. And like every day is a gift type of thing. And now they have the first round bye. We mentioned how valuable it is. They're going to be staring at a likely rematch with the Dodgers that they clinched the NL East title against. We watched the heartbreak. You mentioned before. They lost the World Series back in 2022, the NLCS 2023, the DS against the Mets. This night makes you believe that this Phillies team recognizes that this window is closing. Like this is a time that they have to get through across the finish line and get a championship in Philly. Not that the city needs any more celebrating. The Eagles are so goddamn good. This is a team that recognizes like this is the last time we're going to be together, and it's a gift. That's what they're saying it. So what a gift. This is the Phillies mantra going forward. Your thoughts on them clinching the division title?
Yeah, okay. So as a Met fan, I watch this team closely. The Phillies, obviously, been our main competitor, along with the Braves, not this year, but many of the other years previously. And I think this story, the first 80% of the chapters, is very similar to the last 3 years, very similar squad. And I think the questions, for the most part, are going to be the same. I think the X factors are going to be the same. Before I get to that, let me just get to this here. OptaStats on X, if you don't follow them, they put out some great stuff, great little nuggets here. On June 12th, the Phillies trailed the Mets by 5.5 games. And then just yesterday on the 15th, they clinched the NL East. Since 1969, only one other major league team has clinched its division on September 15th or earlier after being 5 or more games back at the end of any day. So pretty interesting stuff. Now that speaks to how consistent the Phillies started to be and how big of a drop the Mets had. I think it's 2 stories there. But I will say, like early in the season, it was like Mets go on a winning streak, Phillies go on a winning streak, Mets go on a really bad losing streak, Phillies get ahead. Oh, now the Phillies go on a really bad losing streak. They were both kind of inconsistent, streaky teams. Phillies kind of righted the ship, and then while the Mets still continue to try to find themselves. For the Phillies, though, to kind of go back to what I was alluding to, kind of same questions. The biggest positive for them and difference from the last couple of years is the back end of their bullpen. We know that. I think you got to trust that much more than the last few years. But the X factors in the offense still going to be Nick Castellanos for me. And maybe you mix in Max Kepler there as well and a couple other guys. Because when you watch the Phillies in the playoffs, especially as you get to more and more meaningful games, teams are going to try their best to not let Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber beat them. Right? They might get put on base a lot, and all of a sudden you're in a dicey position, and one of these other guys has to come up with a big hit. A lot of times it comes down to Castellanos or guys further down the lineup. Trey Turner, if he can get back healthy, is the other X factor in my mind. Like those are, to me, those are going to be the guys that are going to determine how far this team goes. Pitching staff is very good, but obviously no Zach Wheeler. So you're going to have to hope that Ranger Suarez, Jesus Luzardo, who's very much can be Jekyll and Hyde, and Christopher Sanchez, who's been great in the regular season. You got to hope that they can step up and be great in the playoffs. To me, if they do not win the whole thing, and not only is it the end of an era, it's going to be, I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but I think you're going to see some youngsters here next year mixed in with the veterans that are staying. I have heard some people say that they're not going to be outbid for Schwarber. At this point in Schwarber's career, maybe he doesn't just take the money. Maybe he wants to go play closer to home. Who knows? But I do think if the Phillies do not win the whole thing, at the very least, Rob Thompson will not be a Philadelphia Philly manager next year.
Yeah, and I think if you look at just the vibes in that clubhouse, I mean, you saw Harper, which I didn't know he didn't drink. I know he's Mormon, and the more you dig into it, it makes sense. He doesn't drink. He did the beer bong with the apple juice. Are we all aware that he didn't drink at all? I feel like didn't know that, but either way,
I didn't know that.
Laughing, Garrett Stubbs grabbed him the beer bong. They did the apple juice thing. So the other thing is, speaking of drinking and paying homage, the Milwaukee Brewers, they clinch a playoff spot. They're not officially NL Central champions yet. The reason why this is a story, obviously, this is a foregone conclusion that they would be clinching a playoff spot, best record in baseball. We had Pat Murphy reading a lot of letter he claimed had come from Bob Uecker, only later admitting he had written himself as a tribute to the late broadcaster. And he said, quote, "Howdy, boys. Never a doubt you would get this invitation. You did it by believing." There was, and then obviously there was laughter when Murphy, channeling Uecker, claimed that God had made him the third catcher on the heavenly roster. So Euchre's been a big story here. They did toast him with champagne, and this team has been rallying behind Bob Uecker. And how could you not? The city of Milwaukee has to feel a certain kinship with the voice of baseball. So this is a team that, again, this is one of those things you look at that this is an opportunity for them to take the next step. And you look at the season, how it went, free agency, and the Cubs making all the headlines. When it really mattered, Milwaukee has developed into this really formidable squad, and we'll see if they can make it meaningful come October. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And I think there's some pressure on this Brewers team now because they've shown week after week, month after month, that this is a real thing. This is not just a team that is happy to be there. They want to win a World Series. So Christian Yelich is the leader of that team. He feels like he's the heart of this. We got to see if this team is able to take the next step and be this character building moment for them. It's going to be interesting for the National League. I believe the National League is way more intriguing as far as these matchups, potentially Phillies and Dodgers, Brewers playing a part here. The NLCS is going to be very, very hard to get to. So these teams are going to have to go through a huge timeshare of just making sure that they're well tested. You mentioned the D-backs, that they can get through the gauntlet. These NL playoffs are going to be an absolute gauntlet.
I agree with you. It's like the bottom, like the NL wild card is like disappointingly low records. But then the rest, you're like, oh man, it could be a war. And even again, we'll talk about the Mets in a minute, I think, in some degrees, whether it be the poll or the Soto stuff. But again, if they get there, you look at the roster and you're like, oh, this team should be able to compete with the likes of the Brewers and the Phillies and the Dodgers. Yeah, I agree with you. I won't add much to the Brewer conversation. Some people are like criticizing them for it coming out that it was like a not from Uecker. I mean, listen, here's what I'll say. I give them credit. A lot of times teams will shy away from this kind of stuff or claim that they're not really thinking about that. For them to embrace this publicly, like basically doing it for Uecker, I think is pretty cool. It could add a layer of pressure to a degree and have a really sad ending in a way, but I think they're looking at it the right way. It seems like an extremely close-knit locker room. So, I mean, I'm a Met fan, so hopefully I can't root for the Brewers. But if the Mets do end up either missing or bowing out early, I'll have a hard time rooting against the Brewers, as I think many baseball fans will, unless you're, say, a Cubs fan or, going directly against them. But yeah, I think they're extremely well-built team, very, very well-rounded, and as dangerous as anybody, to be honest.
So we're going to combine our next story with the Twitter polls and conversations. So you posted a poll that said, if they were to make the playoffs, which of these teams is the most dangerous? And going away, the Mets were 35.7% the favorite. The Reds were 21.4%. And we also had the Giants tied at 35.7%. I'm not sure if there's more stats in there because I put this in earlier today. But people believe the Mets are dangerous here. And a big reason for that is Juan Soto. I think 15 years, 765. We did that special episode to cover it. It shows how important it is. There's a lot of pressure. We watched Soto launch his 40th home run of the season on Saturday, which this milestone puts him in some rare company. He became the first player to ever hit 40 home runs in a season for both the Yankees and the Mets, which is following up with a 41 home run campaign with the Yankees last year. 13 games left in the schedule. He might eclipse the career high for him, which is already exciting. And then you look at the other numbers. He paired 40 home runs with 32 stolen bases, 118 walks. So some of the names here: Barry Bonds and Jeff Bagwell had the only two players to ever post a 40, 30, 100 season before. And in Mets history, no player has ever combined 40 home runs and 30 steals until Juan Soto put on a Mets uniform. So this season, and the reason the Mets are playing as they are and free falling is not because of Juan Soto. He's having an electric season as advertised. This is a superstar player. And I think statistically, this has been a masterpiece as far as what he's been able to do on the field.
Yeah, he what it looks like now is he had a maybe bad month and a half or so, and I think it got accentuated, obviously, because of the contract. But I also think it got accentuated because he came up in some big moments and wasn't able to get a big hit for several times in a row. And I think there's still a degree, even though he's ended up having a fantastic all-time season and kind of put to bed the whole thing of like, oh, you put on a Mets uniform, you suddenly become a lesser player. He's put that to bed, but I think maybe he's still looking for that signature moment in a Met uniform, and maybe that comes in the playoffs, God willing. But to go back to the poll here very quickly, so this poll has only been up for like 5 hours, so it still has another 19 hours to go. So we're going to have some changes here. I just brought it up just to see if there's been any updates since we started the show. Mets are not winning that poll anymore. 42% of the audience here on X voted for the Giants, 31%. 31% for the Mets, 19% for the Reds, 8% for the D-backs. I mean, that is eye-opening. I know, like I said, only been up for 5 hours. We're going to see some more changes there. It's not a crazy amount of votes yet, but a decent amount. And the Giants are winning that convincingly. I mean, you look at that rotation. Yeah, Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, that's not a bad 1-2 up there. And I talked about their middle of the order. Suddenly you got some bop there. So it's a capable lineup in some ways, better than we've seen in a while, at least on paper. But I'm surprised. And I think if you ask most of those people, why did you vote for the Giants over the Mets? More than likely their answer would be pitching. Because here's the thing. The Mets, it's pretty clear now, are likely relying at least on two very, very young pitchers if they do make the playoffs. And they're relying on them right now to get there. Jonah Tong, we saw him be thrust into this incredibly blockbuster matchup with Jacob deGrom returning to Citi Field. Either the nerves got to him or he just didn't have it that night, or very well could have been both. And he didn't even make it out of the first inning. Then the next 2 days, Brandon Sproat and McLean go up there and throw 6 innings each of shutout ball, zeros. Those two, I mean, crazy. In the most desperate times when the fan base is incredibly frustrated, you go out and do that. I can't tell you how impressed I was with those two guys doing that and finally getting a win in McLean's start and getting off the 8-game losing streak. But with that being said, if you're voting on that, you do have to think, all right, am I going to take Verlander, Robbie Ray, Logan Webb, not necessarily in that order, or am I going to take these 3 youngsters, as impressive as they've been at times? I kind of get it in a way. I do think the Mets have the better lineup, but they haven't always shown it. Kodai Senga had a really, really good start at AAA. You have to hope he can get back in the mix here as the guy we've seen him be before. But the poll's interesting. I also think the Reds are incredibly dangerous if they can just kind of go on a streak here. I don't love the lineup, but I think it's good enough. And I mean, the pitching when it's at its best, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Brady Singer when he's getting ground balls, Andrew Abbott, like filthy stuff there if they can get themselves into the picture. No one's going to want to see those guys. You want to face Hunter Green in a game 1?
You don't. And I think we talked about 2 weeks ago, last week, about the Reds. Just like, I feel like they're a team that if they just get there, but unfortunately for them, there's been the power outage as we opened up with Ellie De La Cruz. And if they could just find a way to squeak in, and at the same time, Ellie realizes who he is and fixes that swing and starts with more of the power, they could be a World Series contender under the tutelage of a Terry Francona. But let's get to our segment here. What's the word? We have 3 questions to ask, and we have words to associate with it. All right, so back by popular demand, we did this last week, and I thought it was a lot of fun here in honor of PTI being renewed by ESPN last week. We have our What's the Word? So let's talk about the first one here. Salvador Perez is already a Hall of Fame resume with his 300 career home run. What's the word that you associate with that? Is it factual? give your 2 cents on this.
All right. So wait, read it to me again, the actual statement you had there.
Salvador Perez already has a Hall of Fame resume with his 300th career home run.
All right. So I might have picked a word that was just more based on Salvi himself. But if I'm looking at the statement, the word would be agree. I just agree with that. But as far as Salvi himself, I would use the word constant or the constant. I look at that team. First of all, he's one of those guys who you just feel like he's been in the league for 25 years. It's like this guy, like, how old is he? And it's just not true. But he has been the constant of that Kansas City franchise from 2015 and before they won the World Series to now, and of a whole different generation, the Bobby Witt era, if you will. 300 home runs, 1,000 RBIs. Yes, future Hall of Famer, absolutely. The only other Royal to hit 300 home runs was George Brett. Pretty good company. So it's, to me, Salvi, the constant.
Yeah, my word is cemented. And you talk about 300 career home runs, 1,000 RBIs, but you add into that 9 All-Star selections, 5 Gold Gloves, 4 Silver Sluggers, and a World Series MVP. So I don't think this is any debate here for the position. You look at some of the leaderboards historically. This is a historic career we're seeing from Salvi Perez. But let's go with number 2 here. Yordan Alvarez hurts his ankle crossing home plate. I'll pass it to you one more time to start.
We're gonna go snake bit. I mean,
I have the same
listen,
word.
I had a feeling this one we might get the same one, but I honestly, I couldn't go with another word. Just snake bit. I mean, he finally gets back in this lineup after basically being out the entire year with the hand stuff. And he's just hustling. He's just hustling to home. Very reminiscent of the Freddie Freeman ankle turn that took him out for a while, and then he had to like play through it in the playoffs. But he's told the stories now of what he had to go through to get on the field every day and how it kind of still affects him. Even looking at that, like, it wasn't just the ankle. If you look at his knee too, like the knee looks like it's moving away. It shouldn't. Really hard to watch. He's a big dude. All that weight coming down on that. Snake bit. It's a shame. He'd been playing well. The Astros have already lost a hold of first place to the Mariners, who are very hot. So, I mean, listen, the Astros always seem to find a way. So I'm not going to write him off yet. I've learned my lesson there. But for Yordan himself, snake bit.
Yeah, I have the same word here, and I'll use the word cruel to add to it. He missed most of the season with a broken hand, and at this point, they're labeling it a sprained left ankle, but we did see him leaving the ballpark in a walk-in boot and a crutch. So we're waiting for the MRI results. Essentially, to me, it has been a lost season for him. You mentioned him getting the OPS up there, 1.024. He's returned to form. He is a very exciting hitter to watch. So it is an absolute shame to see as the Astros are clawing for an AL West title, still very much in contention, to see. Looks like Alvarez is not going to be a part of that, at least for the immediate future. Let's go with our third and final topic here. Ken Rosenthal falls into Brewers cameraman and gets exposed. Your thoughts on this?
All right. Well, the word is smug. And listen, we've seen 2 videos now. We've seen the video of him
And he apologized.
knocking into the cameraman. Right. We've seen the knock over and then the look and basically not acknowledging it after that. And there was like a little hand movement.
How do you not go and just grab his hand though, by the way? Like that,
right.
like, really? So
then there's the apology the day after everyone tore him apart for 24 hours on Twitter and other places. But still, it's still, even if you believe the apology a little bit, he still came off as smug. I'm sorry. And it's kind of because he's come off as smug other times. Remember, I forget which team it was. Maybe the Padres.
San Diego. San Diego.
Yeah, he really pissed him off last year where they didn't even want to let him in the dugout anymore. So this is not a one-time thing. If it was a one-time thing, when I saw the apology, I'd probably be like, is misunderstanding. Some people have come to his defense. AJ Przinsky, who kind of works with him in foul territory, all that stuff, said like he's a really good dude. Like he would never do this. The only credit I'll give him, as I just said a minute ago, I feel like he looks at the dude, if I really want to break this down, with like a really kind of angry, like, how could you look? And then turns back to see if the guy is ready to interview, and then turns back to the camera. And one more time, he gives a very faint little hand gesture. Maybe could have been like a my bad, but never goes to try to help him up. Maybe the other excuse he make is he wants to make sure he's not busy helping someone up, but he's actually like in the picture, like ready to interview the guy. But overall, yeah, smug is what it came off as.
Yeah, my word was unmasked. I think people do reveal themselves in times where they don't know the camera's on them, and I don't think he could know that the camera was on him. And there was stories about how Scott Paulus is the cameraman's name, photographer for the Brewers. They've had relationships, and he was name dropping him, talking about traveling with him. This is Ken Rosenthal talking about this in the apology video. But to me, it reveals who you are. Innately, if you're a person, you bump into them, think about a complete stranger, whether you're on the train or walking the street, you immediately go pick someone up. I don't care if you're on live TV or not, just because you're not in the shot. And that's the excuse you made. And they're joking around about how it's supposed to be like comparing Muhammad Ali standing over his opponent. And I don't know if this did enough to soften the edges, because you, again, pair it with the stuff with the San Diego Padres where they banned him from the clubhouse. And I think this incident is just one symptom of a larger issue where his image isn't as flawless as probably he wants it to be. And he's revealing more of himself. And I think there is a superiority of a lot of these guys that have existed in the old guard of baseball media that look down at the John Boys, look down at the table setters, look down at these people because they have been there before. And he strikes me as that. I don't know him personally, but the real character gets revealed. You could see it in his eyes. This is not a person that had any sympathy about what happened. He's only sorry because he got caught and looked bad. So they'll say the right things.
It's interesting you bring that up because, and I don't know how real or how maybe in jest this is. I have to look into it more. But like an hour ago, I saw this thing where I guess for a few days now, John Boy and Buster Olney have been kind of going at it a little bit, and it's based on the Aroldis Chapman. It's based on the Aroldis Chapman. Yeah, so the Aroldis Chapman report, I guess, was about him just this year trying to locate his pitches. I guess was initially reported by Buster Olney, maybe Eduardo Perez as well. And then John Boy basically was saying, like, there's no way he actually never was locating. Even brought it up to Boone in one of the interviews, and Boone was like, yeah, that's probably not true. But then there's other things of like doubling down on like, no, Chapman seriously never has tried to locate his fastball before. And like, again, I'm not sure if it's in jest or if it's legit a little bit of a rivalry. Like, Olney's been tweeting about like, it's been this many days since John Boy hasn't admitted that he was wrong about like, the Chapman thing being a real report or something like that. So interesting. Like there is that feeling between some, not all, because some people embrace it very much. But the legacy media, I guess you call it, versus the more new age stuff.
Yeah, there's a gatekeeping level to those guys. The Buster Olneys, the Ken Rosenthal represented, but there's a whole bunch of the old baseball media, the John Heymans of the world. We've already seen the pushback on some of the reports of how baseball is covered and the gatekeeping. And we know the egos on baseball writers when they vote for the Hall of Fame, and just the ethical issues as far as like they feel like they're the authority on so many things of how the game changes. The game is better for John Boy Media and other people like here talking about baseball that are more embracing of it, because think about Rosenthal and Olney. It's been so long since they've been fans of a team, so long since they've embraced the game from a fan point of view, that I think they've lost sight about what it actually means to cover the game in that way. So you can make the same case about other sports. There needs to be a polish to it. You can't just have anyone covering sports, but there is a place for humanity. And to see a guy like Ken Rosenthal look at, it's even worse that he has worked with him for a long time. Scott Paulus is his name. And to not go and reach your hand out, even just say like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on TV. My bad, dude. Like even like a my bad chest pat. You don't get that. That feels like it was very revealing. And again, if it wasn't caught on camera, I feel like it wouldn't have been addressed. He wouldn't apologize for it. So,
yeah, it could have made it a funny thing. Like it could have been a light moment, like humanizing moment, but it ended up being the opposite.
No, definitely an insecurity type of response from him. And we'll see. I mean, most people have his number, as you mentioned, from the Padres thing from a few, I think it's a year ago, 2 years. Maybe it was last year.
A year ago. I think it was last year. Yeah.
But let's come around third here as we wrap up this episode and say goodbye for this week. All right, Devin, as we say goodbye for this week, what are you looking forward to as we have this final 2-week stretch of Major League Baseball's regular season?
Well, obviously, my answer is pretty simple. The Mets are in the thick of it here. The Padres come to town. I am very uncomfortable with Mets Padres. I just feel like the last couple of years, they have had our number more times than not. I know the Mets are a much better home team than they are away, so hopefully that helps. But this series makes me nervous with such a small lead in the wild card race. And on a table setter's note, and I didn't even tell you this yet because it was right before the show, did get in contact with Brady Farkas, who covers the Mariners. Nice. And we are likely to be scheduling something with him very soon, maybe even this week. So you may even get a double episode if we can work out a time with him. We'll talk Mariners, and especially with everything they've gone through this year and where they are now. But I'm sure we'll talk about other things as well. So if you're listening and thinking, oh, Mariners centered episode, I mean, it'd probably be mostly Mariners, but I think we'll sneak in a lot of other stuff. There's so much to talk about, and I love to hear other people's thoughts that maybe paying attention to other teams a little more than maybe we are night to night.
Yeah, it's been a while since we had Brady on here. He's a well-rounded baseball fan, of course, centric of the Mariners, but as you mentioned, very well informed around the league. What I'm looking forward to is the next 3 series, finishing off the series in Minnesota for the Yankees, but then they got Baltimore on deck and the White Sox. They need to fatten up on this way to the postseason. They need to figure out a way to, they got through that marathon of challenging teams, the defining stretch, playing the Astros and playing the Red Sox and the Blue Jays. They walked away unscathed through the fires of hell. They can't let games like last night, losing 7-0 to Minnesota, to spiral out of control. Get a win tonight, win 2 of 3 from Minnesota, go out and sweep the Orioles, do the same thing to the White Sox, and figure out a way to flex your muscles and go into October with some momentum. So they got to clinch first. They got to get there. We know this team, as I mentioned before, is inconsistent at a wild rate, but I think this is the perfect landing spot for the end of their schedule to figure out a way to fatten it up and get there. And maybe the AL East is out of contention, but if they can get there as one of the top wild card spots, you have to kind of be happy. I know 5 games back is not insurmountable the way both these teams have been playing, but at this point, I just want the Yankees to clinch and get there healthy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I think as a Yankee fan, I think most people are happy with how they came through. Not as me as a Yankee fan, but as if you are a Yankee fan, I think you have to be pretty pleased with how they came through that stretch. But you're right. You can't go through that stretch relatively successful and then kind of dump on it by losing to the Twins. So, the whole narrative changes if you go win the next 2.
So again, if you guys want to support our show, please follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at TableSettersPod. As Devin mentioned, stay tuned to if we're having Brady Farkas on for this episode this week, but we will certainly have him on soon talking all things October baseball and the aspirations the Mariners have as they inch closer to a playoff berth themselves. Again, you can interact with us. Please leave a 5-star review if you can on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. It helps us and goes a really long way for the algorithm. Sometimes we do trend in the baseball area of podcasts, and just do a lot of the conversations about baseball. Keep it alive while the football season is keeping centric conversation. Keep baseball in your frontal lobe. It's going to get even more exciting as we approach the end here.
Yeah, no doubt. The fun part's coming, man. Like it can be a lot to go through the season, right? But we're at the fun part, stressful part too, but it gets exciting here. So a lot of fun coming.
So with that being said, we may see you later this week. If not, we'll see you next week. Until that time, we will talk to you after a while.
High fly ball into right field. She is gone. In a year that has been so improbable, the